Good morning. Amen. All right, Michael. All right, we'll adjust your there. Okay, our learning sponsors, Isaac and Evelyn, Year of Learning, Isaac and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister, Chai Racha Bas Isser, Friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanok Zundel, Friends of Mela Skotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bat Pinchas. A month of learning by Isaac and Eda Novik in memory of his mother, Miriam Gittel Bas Hanoch Henech, Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister Golda Leah Bas David Halevi. Tova and Leo Zimmer in memory of her mother, Henya Bas Beryl, and her father, Aaron Ben Yosef Mordechai. B. Pizer in memory of her mother, Rav Yisrael Chaim Ben David. Stanley Presser in memory of his mother, Leah Bas Yehuda, his mother-in-law Golda Bas Leber, and his wife, Rachel Mincha Bas Moshe. Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig, in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Hensha Ita Bat Chaim Yehuda. David and Sharon Karpel, Rabbi Tzvi and Rabin Karpel, in memory of David and Tzvi's father, Zev Moshe Ben Shlomo Yaakov. Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shir Ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. Sarah Alpert and family, in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa Ben Hillel. Week of Learning by Harriet Goldman, in memory of her husband, Hillel Ben Gershon, David Sabgir, Judy Sabgir Gannon, and Jonathan Sabgir, in memory of their father, Aaron Simcha Ben Chaim Tzadok. Chaim Aber, in memory of his mother, Freda Motl Bas Shmayahu. Okay, we have a day of learning. Today is the 13th by Sarah and Perry Grossman, in memory of her brother, Tzvi Mordechai Ben Eliyahu, and their sister-in-law, Ita Bat Yeshaya. May the Shabbos have an aliyah, crank Rafia, Velta Yeshiv Shem Matzliah, and the Chol B'nai Yisrael, good Gaben Shiar. Okay. All right. Okay. Today's stuff is a little bit longer than what we've seen in the past. I wouldn't say it's that much more complicated than what we've had to deal with, though. Okay. Remember, we went back to the Gemara yesterday at the end of the Amud, where it rated to clarify, okay, this whole situation of the the number of different scenarios presented in the Mishnah. Okay, and we saw a situation where Reish Lakish, I believe, was presenting something before Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, and we got into a discussion there of what was B'toch Kadei Dibur. Okay, how much time frame that was, and basically we come to a conclusion at that point that it was Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. Okay, enough time to say those three words. Okay, and at the end of the daf, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya was, I won't say criticizing, but I would certainly say calling attention to Reish Lakish that, okay, given that the situation, he says to him at the end, Tuv lo shavak rav chalatamida, that by defining it in that manner, okay, you are not really giving a student, another student, an opportunity to, if they were to choose to become a Nazir, to say me too, in a sense, because the student would have to greet their Rebbe first, and then that, as a result, that defers the amount of time, and then the end result is that doesn't apply. Okay, and so that's So we're back to the top of Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph, where the Gemara continues with that discussion. How do they have to read that first? Why? Okay, no. It's appropriate to greet your Rebbe first. That's the understanding. You show kavod to your Rebbe. Okay. Oh, as opposed to you're saying taking on Nazarethship because that's a reflection of something positive towards Hashem. Is that your question?
No, my question is suppose he doesn't have a Rebbe and he has to say me too in the time that it says Shalom Aleichem Rebbe,
then if he doesn't have a Rebbe, it's not a non-issue. He could just simply say me too.
But he has to say it
right.
Okay. So he doesn't. All right, I understand. It's a time. It's a certain time.
It could be a time frame, but in this case, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is suggesting to him both there's an issue of time frame and an issue of showing respect to your Rebbe. Okay. If he has one. So that was their point. That's his point. You're talking about, and there's in their society, anybody who was a student of the rabbis, okay, went to yeshiva, or later participated in a beis din or things like that. Tanya Nami Hachi, and a Braita now also teaches this. Okay, so the Braita we're going to see, does this support Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya? Okay, or is it going to be any support to Reish Lakish? Tanya Nami Hachi says the Braita, Misha Amar Hareini Nazir, one who says, okay, and we touched on this as we finished yesterday, one who expresses Nazarethship, Vishama Chavero, and his neighbor heard this, Vishaha Kadei Dibur, and he waited beyond the time frame of saying the three words, Va'amar Va'ani, and then says, I, who, the first person, Asur, is he the Chal v'Nezirut, okay, the V'Chavero Mutar, but the second person, the Nezirut vow does not apply. Okay, and that's really where we stopped yesterday. Bekama Kadei Dibur, and again, what do we say when we refer to this time period of Kadei Dibur? Kadei She'ilat Shalom Talmid L'Rav. It is the fact that a person greets his Rebbe appropriately. Okay, so what happens? Lema Messiah. Shall we say then that this statement supports Reish Lakish, this Braita? Misha Amar Hareini Nazir, B'Shema Chavero. If one hears his neighbors take a Nazareth vow, all right, okay, and then Va'amar Va'ani, Va'ani, and one person says me too, and then another person says me too, V'tulo, and no more. Okay, in other words, does it imply that, well, two people might be able to get it in time, but a third would not, okay, because this one says, and then this one says, and then maybe the time has elapsed already, okay? Tana, okay, so the Gemara's answer to that suggestion of the time frame, okay, is Tana, ki ruchla l'chashiv l'izil. Are you going to say that the Tana is going to go around like a peddler peddling his wares? You know, this and this and then, you know, go on and on and on and on. That kind of view, right? Okay. Velitne chad. So the Gemara's suggestion is, so let him teach just one example, v'lashma'inan ahani, and we could learn all the others from that one example. Why did he have to give an example with two people? Okay, well, fine. You say two people, maybe it's the time frame works more than two not. Okay, so the answer is, well, if you're saying he wants to be concise, the Tana, in essence, let him just give one example and we would learn it from that. Okay, so what happens? Hachanami, here too, umishum de katane sefer. that maybe we're talking about the fact that he implied only the two people, okay? Okay, and there's a question of repeating the vow due to the passage of time. Mishum de Katani Sefer, but here, because we wanted to teach something more, Hutar Harishon, okay, that if the first individual, the initial stater of the Nazarite vow, okay, was then freed from the vow, Hutru Kulan, that all the others, they were being linked to his statement, and therefore the others would be freed as well. Hutar ha'acharon, but I'm putting in here, if the last person, let's say the second person in our example, was freed from the vow, ha'acharon mut what? Okay, or a third, right? Ha'acharon mutar v'chulan asurin. The last person would be freed from the vow, but the others, the vow would still apply, and they would still be following need to follow the prohibitions of the Nazarite vow. Mikla deika emtsai. He says, from this, we might be able to learn and say that there was a in-between person, in other words, that there was three. Umishum hachi katani va'ani va'ani. And maybe for that reason, that's why he taught that there was only gave two examples. Okay, me too, me too.
Does the Gemara say that the second one has also say it to Talkate Libor? In other words, he says it.
Clearly.
The second one says it.
No, clearly the second one also has to be Kadei
It's the
Dibur.
third person. That's the third
No. Okay, all right. Now, the question we're going to get ultimately is the following. Ibayalahu. So they now ask in the academy, Chad bechavre midpiece. Do we say that when one person says it, then the next person continues to link to that person? O Dilma becama mitpasei. Or do we say that it's based only on the very first initial statement of the vow? Okay, in other words, are they connecting, linking their vow to their immediate predecessor, or are they linking their vow to the very first person who made the vow? Is it a chain or not?
Yeah, the image I used was, is it a chain or is it spokes in a wheel?
That's a little too difficult for me. Okay. Okay. Lamai nafkamina. So what's the difference? Asks the Gemara. And the Amud is going to continue exploring this question. Okay. And it goes as follows. Right. It puse umizio. So maybe we're saying that it's going to continue to link. Iamart chad bechavre matpis. If you're going to say that one then continues and links to the other, mitpasin vazlinim laolam, then you might argue that it continues and could go on for ad infinitum almost. This one to this one to this one to this one.
No, only to the guy before you.
Just the one, just your immediate predecessor. Okay? V'iyamart bekama mitpasin. But if you're going to say that you're only basing it on the very first initial stater of the vow, okay? Tfei, all right, if that's the case, tfei mikdei dibur lo mitpasin. More than anyone who tries to say it within the time frame of Kedei Dibur, then that does not link. That does not continue from the first person, right? Well, yeah. Mai, so what's the answer? Tashma. Let's try to come to an answer with a brighter. And the Gemara is going to show us today that in this case, we try a number of brighters to bring proof. Okay? First example, first bright. Tashma. Hareini Nazir. One person declares that they're a Nazarene. V'shamach havero ba'amar ba'ani. Okay? And the next person says, and I too. Va'ani. And another one says, I too. V'tu lo midei. And then further, there is no other, right? In other words, no one else. Shma mina, from this we may learn from this Braita, Bekama hu demitpaseh, that one must be linking to the very first initial stater of the vow. Okay? De'isa kadata chad bechavre mitpaseh. Because if you were to think that it's one who connects to his predecessor and then continues linking onward, litnei tuva va'ani, then the Mishnah, the Braita should have taught further examples of others saying, and me too. Okay? Now, Tana, but here we're going to raise that same challenge that we raised earlier. But regarding the Tana who taught this Braita, ki rochla lechashev v'lizim, do you expect him to go on like a peddler, repeating and repeating and repeating? Okay? Again, v'litnei chad lashme'inin kulhun. So let him simply teach one example, in other words, one person, and we would learn all the others from that one. Ide dikatane hutar harishon hutru kulan. No, here he wanted to teach that since when it was freed, permitted, okay, when the first person was freed from their vow, all the others were free. Hutar ha'acharon. But whereas when the last one is freed from the vow, ha'acharon mutar, b'chulan asurin, that only the last person is exempted, freed from the vow, but all the others are still, the vow applies to them. Miklau,
Rabbi Green, what it says here, Rishon, does it mean the original one?
the original one. Okay. Miklau de'ika emsa'i. From here, then we would have to gather that there certainly was a middle person, a third person. Mishum hachi katani va'ani va'ani. And again, that's the reason that he only gave two examples, because in this case, maybe with the two examples, they made their statement within Kadei Dibur, but one of them, another person, maybe did not. Okay? Okay, what happens? Tashma. So we don't have clear proof from that particular Braita whether we base it on the initial person or just their predecessor. So we now try another Braita. Tashma, says the second Braita. Hutar harishon v'hutru kulan. Okay, we said that when the first person is exempted from the vow, okay, or right, or permitted, all the others are as well. Rishon hu desharu. Clearly, the first person is the one who is permitted, right? Ha-emtsa'ilo. That would mean that a later person, one in the middle, is not. Shmamina. That would seem to teach us Bikama mitpasim. That again, it's all based on the initial stater of the vow of the right. However, the Gemara says, Emelach, but I might say to you the following, okay? Le'olam chad bechavre matpis. No, maybe it's such that it is really based on the immediate predecessor, okay? When he says ani va'ani, okay? Va'ide deba'i mitna hutra kulan. And the fact that our Mishnah wanted to teach us that it said that all of those individuals were then exempted from the vow, the itana emtsai, where it's such that somebody had taught, so to speak, the middle person, a later individual, ika rishon, delo mishtare, that maybe there's an earlier person, okay, that was not freed, mishum hachi katani rishon, and therefore, in this particular case, that's why they want to teach that the earlier person is exempt. Okay, so we don't have clear proof from that, right? Okay, whether it's the first stater of the vow or one's immediate predecessor. We go to another bright. Tashma, says this brighter. Hutar ha'acharon mutar v'chulan asurin. Our brighter now says that when the last person is exempted from the vow of Nazirut, that person is exempted, but all the others, in other words, those who preceded him, would not be exempted. Delo ika achrina batre. Maybe that's because there's no one else after him. Aval emtsai. But if there's a earlier, I'm translating emtsai here, a middle person, an earlier one, deika achrina batre, where there would be another individual after him, mishtare, then he would be permitted. Shmamina, from this I would learn, chad bechavre matpis, that this seems to imply that it's the immediate predecessor is the one that he's linking to. Le'olam emelach bekama mitpasi. No, says the Gemara. We always are going to say that one links to the first speaker of the vow. Umay achalon. So why then do we bring in the case, in this case, of the last person, right? The katani emtsai, so that we can teach that there was a intermediate person there. Va'ide de tana rishon, tana achron. In this case, since we taught that there was an earlier person, we're also teaching that there is a later person. Okay? Again, no clear proof from the bright. Right? We come back and now we cite another bright. Tashma, the Tanya Behedi. And now we have a brighter that is explicit in what it teaches, right? Hutar harishon, okay? Hutru kulan, okay? If the first person is exempted, then all the others are exempted. Hutar ha'acharon, if the last person is the one who is exempted, ha'acharon mutar, the chulan asurin. All the last person is exempted, but not, okay, the others. Hutar ha'emtsai, but if somebody in the middle, okay, in other words, if we're saying the example of, let's say, 3 people, or even the initial statement and 2 others,
Which is 3.
okay, which would still give us 3 people, and the middle guy got cleared from his vow, Hutar emtsai, himenu ulamata muta, from him and below, in other words, following, okay, are exempted. Himenu ulamala, but from him and above, those who preceded the middle guy, asur, for them the Nazareth vow would still be applicable. Okay, shmamina. From this we would learn chad bechavre matpis. But this seems to tell us that it is a chain, it is a link based on the immediate predecessor.
The ones who bowed. The ones who bowed from him and before him.
Okay, in other words, if I make the vow and you say me 2, and Zev says me 3, okay, and you're the one that gets exempted, then Zev is exempted as well, but I'm not. That's what it's saying.
The third guy is not.
No,
The first guy.
first guy is not. Okay, and indeed the Gemara says shmamina.
A deeper only is the gap between your immediate predecessor.
Right. It's based on the guy before you.
Theoretically, in
Okay,
The second guy is exempted, then the third guy, the one after him.
is exempted as well.
Because
He's exempted as well,
exempted as well.
right?
because he says he wants to be like number 2.
Not number
Right.
2.
That's
And
it.
if number
That's the
2 is
example
off,
I
then
just
he's
gave.
well,
I just,
Everybody else in the chain. is all-
Right.
correct, because we all want to be like the guy before
He's
us.
still exempted,
Mhm,
even if he doesn't want to be.
right. Okay,
Well, he could make a new vow.
right, he'd make a new vow and then be the Nazareth.
But you wouldn't know that.
but he'd have to do it on his own.
You wouldn't know that he's gonna exempt.
He would be
Depends, it depends. Okay? Hareini Nazir v'shama chavero. We now start another piece of the Mishnah, a new piece. One declares there's a Nazareth, and his neighbor hears and says, Pi kepiv v'sa'arai k'sa'aro v'chuli. My mouth is like his mouth, and or my hair is like his hair. Okay? All right? Mishum de Amar. So the Gemara is going to ask again. And remember, we keep saying, if there are statements that are not clear expressions of Nazirut, how do we know for sure that the person is taking it on? Okay? So that's where we're picking up. Mishum de Amar pi kapiv v'sa'arei k'sa'aro harei nazir. Look at how the Gemara really challenges it. You're going to say, because he says, maybe he says, oh, I don't want to eat pizza. So that, does that mean that's vow with somebody saying, they're never going to eat pizza? Okay? All right? So what happens? So the Gemara picks up as we continue on the top of the Amud. Or minhe, but we'll challenge this, okay, with the following. What if a person says, Yadai Nazira, okay, or Raglai Nazira, okay, my hands are Nazareth, my feet are like Nazareth, okay, all right, or even in sin. Lo Amar Klum, he did not say anything. In other words, it's not a valid expression. But if he says, Roshi Nazira, my head is like a Nazareth. Kvedi Nazira, my liver is like a Nazareth. You're saying it doesn't make sense? Let's wait. That's a good, I'm going to take that as a question, Avi. Okay? And let's see if the Gemara answers it. If you don't feel the Gemara's answer is satisfactory, you'll tell me. Okay? All right. So what happens? Harei zen nazir. Then a statement like that seems an adequate expression, and therefore we would declare that person a Nazareth. Why? Avi is asking, right? Namely, zeh haklal. Here's the rule. Davar shehaneshama tluya bo. Okay, something in which your life essence, okay, is dependent upon harei zen nazir. When you, right, exactly.
They also say that about a hand or a foot.
No. Okay, that's the whole point, right? Okay, yeah.
The truth is, with the head, with haircut, and what's the other one?
Liver.
The liver. Taking schnapps.
Okay. All right. So all I'm simply saying, you might, okay, all right, you might present it that way. Okay. And that is part of the you're giving strength to Avi's question from before, okay, by presenting it that way. But the Gemara does not look at it that way. Okay, what the Gemara wants us to understand is something more significant. Okay, right? Namely, that what we're seeing here, okay, is that this also seems to contradict the Mishnah. Okay, because it seems to be saying that a mouth is not a vital part, or a hair is not a vital part of a person. So if you swear your expression based on non-vital essential parts, okay, right? So what happens? Amar Rav Yehuda, the Amar Hachi. Okay, so Rav Yehuda wants us to understand this is what the person really meant when he made my mouth like his mouth, my hair like his, namely the following: Ya'aseh pi kapiv miyayin v'sa'arai k'sa'aro milagos. That let my mouth be like his mouth vis-a-vis wine, and therefore that's a clear expression of refraining from wine, one of the prohibitions associated with Nazirut. and my hair like his hair by refraining from getting a haircut. Okay, so by spelling out the expression, particularly in regards to Nazir prohibitions, that also is why in that situation, Reb Yehuda would say it does apply. Okay,
He's now supported the Mishnah.
right. So that shows that you don't have to say that that section of the Mishnah is problematic. Okay, we go now again to another piece from the Mishnah. Hareini Nazira, okay, back to the husband-wife situation. Hareini Nazira v'shama bala. Notice they jump immediately here, not to the husband saying it, but here the wife saying she's the Nazareth, and the husband hears it. Va'amar, and he says, Va'ani, me too, eino yachol lahafer. He is not able to revoke, release her, right? Okay, her vow. Ibailaho. So they ask, we'll see.
Everything is always talking.
Okay, let's see what happens. Ibailaho. So they ask in the academy, okay, when he comes to be Mayfair her vow. And remember, we've always said there's a difference between Mayfair by the husband and the She'ela by the Chacham. Okay? And the argument we've always asked with regards to Mayfair is does he retroactively uproot her vow as if it never was? Or is he only cutting short her vow? But from the time he heard about it, and at that point he ends it, but he severs it. Thank you, Alan. But meanwhile, between the time she said it and the time he severed it, the vow was chal, was in action, was in effect. Okay, so our Gemara comes back and asks that question. Okay, and that's how they're going to continue, right? Okay, now that we'll see that, we can move on. The following: Ba'al ma'akar akar. Does the husband uproot retroactively? Or dilma migaz gies, or does he simply sever it? Right? Lamai nafkamina, what's the difference? The isha shenedra benazir, for regarding another woman who took a vow of Nazarethship. This woman took a vow, right? Vishama chaverta, and her neighbor, her good friend, her next to va'amra va'ani, and that woman, a second woman, then said, me too. Vishama ba'ala. Okay, and then, okay, the first woman's husband was the one who heard about the vow. Okay, what happens? Shel rishona. All right, that's what it says. Vishama ba'ala shel rishona. Vahaferla. And her husband, first woman's husband, right, revokes it. If you're going to say it's like a retroactive uprooting, right? Hahi nami ishtare. Then the second woman is also no longer applicable than the vow. V'iamat migaz gies. But if you're going to say he only severed his wife's vow, ihi ishtare, his wife is permitted. V'chaverta asura, and the second woman who took the vow is prohibited. Right? Mai. So what do we have here? What's the answer? Tashma. Let's answer it through the following brayta. Hareini nizira v'shama ba'ala. Okay, she says she's a Nazarite. The husband hears va'amar va'ani, and he says, me too. Eino yachol lahafid. Our text says, the Braita, that he is not able to revoke it. Ve'isa gadata ba'al migaz gies. And if you're of the opinion that the husband, I'm going to put in the word here simply for a moment, okay, severs lefer leishto v'hu litzar. Okay, so let him simply cancel it. Okay, and he nevertheless would be remain required to fulfill the vow because he cannot revoke his own vow. Okay,
It can't go retroactive, so it never happened.
well, that's true too, but person can't revoke their own vow.
The second woman who says me too, can her husband revoke her
Yeah, of
vow?
course.
He could.
As soon as he hears
Okay.
it.
Ela lav shmamina. But don't we learn from this bright the following? Ba'al ma'aker akar. That this would seem to tell us that the husband is able to revoke retroactively. No, says the Gemara. La'olam megaz giyes.
He said that.
No, we're saying here that what? That he only severs it. Ubadinhu deleferla. But doesn't it seem logical that he should be able to cancel it? Vahainu tama delo matzi mefer. So therefore, this is a reason that he can't revoke her vow. Why? Kevan da amar la va'ani. Because once he says me too, keman da amar kiyem lichidami. Because that is as if by saying me too, it's as if he's made a confirmation of her vow. Okay, that's the point. Okay, imachil. Okay, if that's the case, says the Gemara, if it's possible then to ask permission from a sage to get exemption, ahakamaton matze mefer. Let him go back, find a sage, and ask to be cancel his confirmation of the statement. Ve'ilo, and if not, lo matze mefer. And if not, then he is not able to obliterate it,
Rabbi
cancel it.
Green, can the wife independently go to a sage and have her vow revoked
Sure she could.
or annulled rather?
If
And then he's still liable for the zeros then.
Right.
No.
If he said me too. Yeah. No, what do you mean?
If the husband, when he hears his wife made a vow, has three options.
Well, but that
If
wasn't
he
Zev's question.
cancels, it's
That
canceled.
wasn't Zev's question.
Yes, it is.
No, I
If
said,
he is Makayev, his wife cannot.
Michael. Okay, you're right, but that wasn't his direct question.
Was, can a woman independently cancel a vow?
No, his question was, could the woman go to a chacham and get the vow?
And so the answer is maybe.
Yes.
The answer is yes or no.
Okay. All right.
Depends what the husband did.
Okay. Tashma. Okay, says a new bright. Ha'isha shenedra b'nazir. A woman went ahead, took a Nazarite vow. Okay? And what happens? She proceeded based on that. V'hifrisha et behemta. And she put aside her animal. In other words, the appropriate offerings. Okay? Right? V'achar kach hefer la ba'ala. And after that, that's when the husband then cancels her vow. Im shelo hayta behema. If the animal was clearly his, okay, originally, what happens? They should put the animal out to pasture, okay? But if the animal was clearly hers, then she must allow the chatas offering to die. Why? Because the ola and shlamim offerings may nevertheless be given as gifts, okay, as an adava without any obligation.
How do you let it die? Just
What?
stop it to death or?
You lock it in a.
You put it into a pen and you don't.
Stall and you let it
Right.
start.
V'isaka da'atach ba'al ma'akar akar.
Don't tell Peter about it.
Okay, and if you don't, and if we're going to argue that the husband revokes it retroactively, right? Tepuk l'chalan. Why don't we say then that the animal should go back to be non-consecrated in that case? Elalav shmamina ba'al megaz giyez. But don't we learn from this particular brighter then that we say that it's only severing done by the husband? Olam emalach ba'al me'akar akar. No, says the Gemara. we say that the husband is the one who can retroactively uproot it. Vahainu tama, but rather this is the reason. Kevan de lo tzricha kapara, okay, since she does not need, in this case, atonement. Havet kechatat shemetu bale. This animal is like a chatas offering where the owner of the animal has passed away already. So it's a the animal does not serve then its purpose for kapara as a chatas. Ugemire, and we've learned the chatas shemetu bale tamut, that a chatas offering whose owners have died, that animal is allowed to die.
Required.
Okay, that's the point. Tashma, listen to the following bright. We'll try it, explaining it this way. Ha'isha shenedra b'nazir, va'ita shota yayin, u'mitam alametim. Okay, take the example of a woman who took Nazareth vow, but intentionally drank wine, or became had some contact with deceased. Harei zo sofeget et ha'arba'im. She must be punished with malchus, right? Hechidam, how is this possible? Ilema de lo hefer la ba'al. If we're going to say it's because the husband did not revoke her vow, tzricha lamema, right? Shouldn't we have to say this? Do we need even to raise that up? Isn't that obvious to us? Ela pshita, rather that should be obvious. If he didn't revoke her vow, and she was over on certain aspects of Nazirus, she gets punishment. Okay, but if we're going to argue that the husband did revoke her vow, and if when you say he's revoking her vow, he does so, and in that manner it's uprooted retroactively, why then should she be punished with 40 lashes? Ela lav shmamina. But therefore, don't we learn from this bright Baal megaz giyes, that the husband simply severs the vow once he hears from it? And the Gemara answers, Le'olam emalach Baal ma'aker akar. No, we continue to say that when the husband responds and revokes, it is uprooting it retroactively. Umishum de katani sefer, and because we taught it at the end, hefer la ba'ala vehi lo yad'ah, that when the husband revokes it and she does not know, v'haita shota yayin umitam alametim, and were she to drink wine and become tamei, right? Either one or the other, eina sofeget ha'arba'im, then she doesn't suffer the 40 lashes. This stylistic contrast, right? Tana Resha sofeget, and that's why the earlier part of the Braita says she would get 40 lashes in that situation. And we'll stop with that. It would be helpful. That's why the question is, do you need to revoke it?
And then she didn't go on, there's no problem.
Right.
And if it's retroactive, even if she thought she was sinning, she really wasn't, because it's